Hello everyone, my name is Par, and welcome to Niche, where we fall into the folds of music to unfold its intricacies. And today I want to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is non-binary people. But seriously, the gender-nonconforming experience can be quite unique, especially in art when considering all the perspectives of life and love that non-binary people develop alongside their self-discovery. And so, for this inaugural episode of Niche, I thought we could take a dive into the realm of non-binary musicians and give some recommendations for artists and bands that I think are worth checking out. After all, the popular sphere of non-binary and gender-nonconforming musicians basically consists of Sam Smith and Miley Cyrus, and while I do have some singles that I enjoyed by both of them, I want this video to be a bit deeper of a dive into some modern genderqueer musicians in all genres and palettes. So without further ado, here's a bunch of non-binary, genderqueer, genderfluid, and gender-nonconforming musicians that I enjoy and feel like you should give a try as well. First off, we have Christine and the Queens. Now, for fans of Smith and Cyrus, I could see Christine and the Queens being a pretty good jumping off point. After all, she makes a lot of music that jumps out with every word and beat, with sharp songwriting that gets stuck in your head, although not in the most immediate of ways. She was recently featured on Charli XCX's song Gone, and I feel like this exemplifies this trait of dark horse songwriting very well. She also explores a lot of concepts that resonate within the trans umbrella too, such as the lyrics on Girlfriends featuring Dame Funk that declare, "I don't feel like a girlfriend, but I can be your lover." Now, Christine and the Queens is from France and usually releases English and French versions of her songs, as well as a couple of other different languages. I know on her last EP, she had some songs that were in Italian as well as Spanish. She also identifies as genderqueer and explores this through alter egos of herself. In fact, her 2018 album Chris explores a lot of the themes of masculinity and the preconceived notions of being male as the titular persona of Chris. Christine and the Queen's music sounds like if you mix the production of late-era LaRue with the complex songwriting of Perfume Genius, and I would definitely recommend the album Chris alongside the EP that I mentioned earlier that she released back in February called La Vita Nuova. Overall, Christine and the Queens makes great stuff if you like pop music with some organic richness and contemplation without sacrificing any of the groove. Moving on to something a little bit more artificial, albeit still uncompromising in its complete assault on gender norms, we reach Dorian Electra, who is a fixation within the hyperpop scene who remains poignant. Dorian Electra is gender fluid, and they make use of that by going from persona to persona, costume to costume. Not that unsimilar to that of a drag queen, but their writing tends to take a lot more of a complex approach to that. Whether it be making a satire of capitalism from the perspective of a masochistic and work-obsessed career boy, or taking into perspective some of the stereotypes of sugar daddy culture on Daddy Like, lots of Dorian's music challenges many of the preconceived notions of gender regardless of sexuality. Electra uses auto-tune as a tool to produce androgyny, and making their music that much harder to constrict into a binary, and much more expressive as a result. Combined with bombastic production from the likes of Dylan Brady from 100 Gex fame, as well as Absurdist, who is also within the queer sphere of underground pop electronica with albums of their own like Imaginary Friend. Dorian Electra's debut album Flamboyant is a modern staple in LGBTQ music, which shows some of the most chaotic sides of non-binary artistry, and doing so with flying colors. Continuing this trend of glitchy electronics and eye-catching imagery, we have Arca. Now, Arca is a Venezuelan producer turned singer whose structure and production varies wildly, with art that tends to take more of a turn into the abstract. Her music ranges from the beautiful ballads of her self-titled albums such as Reverie and Desafío to the 62-minute-long single that is Arroba. The latest album from Arca, called Kick 1, kicks off with the song Nonbinary, where she confronts a lot of people that try to define her persona, when even terms like non-binary can be limiting in grasp. Sure, it may be a step up from other language that might be unable to explain all experiences, but as Arca explores, it is not the end-all of gender identity. In addition, Arca's production tends to rely heavily in percussion drawn from IDM, while incorporating lots of synths that just feel so warm. They could be real instruments, but on like an alien planet. The way she contorts her melodies and harmonies around each other is already a feat before we consider the scenes and art that she incorporates into her music, from the enamoring album covers to the austere music videos. I would recommend a lot of her vocal albums such as Kick 1 and her self-titled, as well as the DJ mix that makes up Aroba. However, fair warning, it can be a lot to take in, so if you blink, you just might miss something. And now, from glitch to fuzz, we see the lo-fi aesthetics that make up the projects Lola's Pocket PC and Weatherday. In 2019, between these two projects entirely comprised by one non-binary person by the name of Sputnik, 3 albums worth of material came out, which is honestly astonishing. Including the Mio's Teeth single that came from Weatherday that year, that clocks in just shy of 2 hours of music between 2 projects that are vastly different. Now, Lola's Pocket PC comprises of mostly synthwave and electropop, with just a hint of progressive structure seen in the nearly 15-minute behemoth that is the song Lola. Most of the music of this project is seen to have synths and drum machines whirring like they're in the Matrix, while having lyrics about hacking and love that are sung with very high-pitched harmonies. Meanwhile, Weatherday plays a long-eared, anxiety-ridden protagonist and counterpart to Lola, with Midwest emo tendencies and a lower timbre to accompany the character. Even with reports that the Weatherday album Come In was recorded entirely on Sputnik's headset microphone, that doesn't stop Weatherday from pouring their heart out into every verse on this project, which makes the emo ties especially cathartic. Both projects sound very homemade, which makes the results all the more genuine and heartwarming in the end, and definitely worth recommending. Now, so far, all of these entries have been from non-binary and genderqueer individuals, but what about a band of non-binary people? Well, technically only 3 of the 4 members in this band are non-binary, but still, Glass Beach is a project that is about as all over the place in styles of rock as you can get. A lot of the songs on their first album, aptly titled the First Glass Beach album, are very multifaceted, almost like they are portraying the spectrum of gender within each song. And as such, each song feels like a separate alternate universe where the same members still somehow manage to find each other and form a band. From the indie-tronica of Bone Skull and the power pop of Cold Weather to the show tunes of classic Jay Dies and Goes to Hell Part 1, and even the ambient-inspired interludes throughout. And while everything about their music does seem disjointed, it also manages to work. I've seen a lot of people describe Glass Beach as the Weezer for theater kids, and while some parts of that might be true, I don't think that necessarily encapsulates all the styles in just this album alone. Every minute, a new style emerges that throws all your expectations out the window for what could possibly come next that could also fit within the themes and the range of this band. And I think that's a beautiful metaphor for non-binary people as a whole. And so, moving on to another eclectic voice in the realm of the bedroom pop and noise pop circuits, we have Floral Tattoo. This Seattle-based trans rock band has 3 of their 5 members who use they/them pronouns, and their lyrical focuses as being trans teens coming of age and reevaluating their world resound very heavily within me, especially given my current position right now. I I first heard about this band from the album they released at the beginning of the year, You Can Never Have a Long Enough Head Start. And ever since then, I've been moved so heavily by songs on that album such as She, as well as Danny Be Well. This has been one of my front runners for Album of the Year in 2020 because it seems to very accurately depict the emotions of this hellish year, both poetically as well as sonically, while only coming out on the 3rd of January. Unfortunately, I haven't really dug that much further into their discography, but I feel that if it's as open and strong as this album, with all its scars and haunting permutations, while also being as hopeful of a solution as it is to it all, then Floral Tattoo are definitely ones to look out within the scenes of shoegaze and Seattle rock. They're definitely a strong recommendation from me. Keeping the authentic aesthetics of Floral Tattoo while adding just a hint of nonchalance, we have folk representation from Melblum. This non-binary musician is based out of New York, which are two things that you don't immediately associate with the folk genre. However, Melblum started out with a very minimal setup of sweet acoustic guitars, light vocal harmonies, small percussion, and the occasional banjo, which I think suits their style of writing very well. Their album, Every Time You Go Somewhere, is a pretty good example of this, as Blum observes the world's propensity to travel. Their music is mostly singer-songwriter type stuff you may find on your local college radio station. Personally, I couldn't stop comparing them to Valium Housewife while I was listening to this. But anyways, several albums later, Melblum gets a record deal to Don Giovanni Records in 2014, and their sound evolves to include a standard punk three-piece band. And personally, I think this also manages to blend very well with Blum's writing. It just goes to show that the clothes don't necessarily make the person, you know? If you are who you are, then the labels are kind of pointless. From this era of their discography, I would suggest the album You Look a Lot Like Me, which has a lot of themes involving identity issues, I think. I'm still reading into the lyrics of this record, but I still would recommend it nonetheless. Another underground artist based out of New England, but in a completely different vein, we have Pink Navel, who is also known as .dev. Pink Navel is a producer and rapper with a lot of influences coming from the MF Doom and Madlib camps, while also trying to develop, and I'm paraphrasing here, some of the cutest rap that you will ever hear. Getting cosigns from other underground rappers such as Milo and Kenny Segal, their trajectory seems to only be going up with a steady release schedule of a new project every year, including Giraffe Tracks, which will be coming out later this September. And while a lot of their albums do have concepts lyrically, what I'm more intrigued by are the concepts behind these albums production-wise, where Navel will challenge themselves to incorporate a singular synth tone across all the tracks, like on Raw Navel, or samples of a similar origins, like all the video essay snippets that encompass Andre's Gift and Omer Tower. The references to food and cartoons and internet culture over beats that sound like if JPEG Mafia went to heaven makes albums like Born on the Stairs and, again, Andre's Gift, as well as the rest of Pink Navel's catalog, a unique atmosphere and one of a kind in a sea of other wavy hip-hop that comes from Bandcamp. And finally, we have Yves Tumor. I left them for last because it's honestly kind of hard trying to find a connection between Yves Tumor and all of the others in this video. On one hand, they have the brutally shocking imagery of an act like Arca, but also the compositional capabilities, vocal delivery, and experimental nature of someone like Prince. On the other hand, however, everything from Tumor still feels like a transition into a higher and higher being that defining would be a waste in the shadow of what may come. Going from a sound collage and dark ambient project to what may now be the definitive voice in psychedelic rock and hypnagogic pop in this century, Yves Tumor keeps building on their empire of head-turning graphics and galaxy-building music. Their music just feels like everything from the psychedelic and experimental music of the 70s and 80s was remastered, but with a hint of unease to the structures in slight ways to expand outside the borders that were limiting the artists in those previous eras. Albums like Safe in the Hands of Love and Heaven to a Tortured Mind makes Yves Tumor seem four-dimensional as a being beyond human comprehension, thus exemplifying the non-binary experience, even when lyrics give us gravity to stay on the earth. And with that, those were all the artists I wanted to recommend to you. I know that there's probably a lot of other artists and musicians that I missed out on with this video, so if you have any non-binary or gender non-conforming artists that you like, make sure to leave a comment down below and let me know. After all, I love getting new music recommendations, no matter the genre or the source, and who knows, if I get enough, I might consider making a part 2 to this video. If you want to see more of this series, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'm going to try and use this channel a lot more frequently for these long-length deep dives into niches in music, because they're really fun to research and I really want to spread the love towards these artists as well. Music is definitely a hard career to sustain, especially given the restrictions right now on touring, and musicians really help to fill a void within the world with sounds that we otherwise would never consider. And so in the description are all of these artists and their pages, alongside where you can buy and stream their music, because the best way to tell a musician, hey, I really like what you do, keep going with what you're doing, is to support them. And yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you so much. I've been Par, you've been watching Niche, and I'll see you next time.